I am a faculty and associate professor of management at the Keck Graduate Institute and a core faculty member of the Masters of Business and Science program. I am also appointed roughly slightly more than a year ago as our WAS accreditation liaison officer. And so you can, I'll put in the chat, my profile, and so you can know a little bit more about me. But more important today, our star is Divij Gulati. And so I've taught him before. He was definitely a very good, interesting student. I still remember at the height of the COVID, he actually had this sewing machine, which then, you have those cloth, face masks that you give out to people. So Divij, from my understanding, is a smart, intelligent, and also kind person, student, and now very valuable, capable alumni of KGI, extremely useful to society. And but that's my impression. And so with that, I think that I want to pass the floor to Divij and have him explain a little bit of his background, where did he come from, where is he now, where is he going, and so your background and then your current role, the most challenging aspects of your job, and maybe those challenging aspects are also your favorite aspects of your jobs, and then why. And we'll do that first, before we talk about his current company. If somehow his current company get implicated in his story, then go ahead, Divij. All right, Divij, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chalk, and thank you for those kind words. I really, really appreciate it. I think I have really fond memories of your class from back at KGI, so I really miss those times. Hi, everyone. I'm Divij. I am working at Gilead in the supply chain planning team currently. Before coming to KGI, let me give a brief background about where I come from. I have a background in biotechnology engineering from Punjab University in India. And during that time, I was working in microbiology, I was working in immunology, I was working in nanotechnology, and I was doing a lot of core research aspects of biotech, and I was really interested in getting my PhD at that time. So towards the end of my engineering, I went in for a 6-month long internship in a research lab and trying to, get some research done and working with PhD scholars at that time. And that is when I really realized that this is something I would not be able to do for 6 long years to get a PhD in. And it was really something that did not excite me day to day. Just reading research papers, setting up experiments, doing the experiments, failing, trying to do that again, and repeating that cycle over and over again. And what really excited me was, how can I actually make an impact in the lives of patients? So academic research is really different from industrial research, where the main goal in academic research is to get funding for your lab, make sure that your lab has all the things you need, and getting an academic publication out of it. A lot of people miss the part of making sure that the academic publication really has an impact on the society or the people. And that just gets buried in the library of resources that your lab keeps building over time. And that is the biggest gap that I found in my academic research phase at that time. So I decided to, learn the industry side of things, learn the business side of things. And that is how I learned about KGI. This was one of the few schools that was helping scientists or people in research transform into business professionals in the industry. So I joined KGI right after my undergrad with literally no industry experience, no business experience. And that was in 2019. So I joined the Masters of Business and Science program, and I started learning a lot about, what is finance, what is strategic operations, what is supply chain, what are regulatory affairs laws, what are the FDA guidelines. And these were some things I had no idea about when I was coming to KGI. And that is where I started building an appreciation for the industry, and appreciation for the pharma and biotech industry specifically, to understand how complicated and hard and expensive it is to start research and development and push that drug compound into a drug product, into clinical trials, all the way into the market, and how many people and how many teams are actually coming together to do that very simple process that looks from the outside but is so complicated and so detailed when you look at it from the inside perspective. Um, so during my time at KGI, I had the opportunity to work on a lot of projects, as I'm sure every one of you will be also working on a lot of team projects, a lot of group projects that really add on to your experience. I was also fortunate to get my internship at Boehringer Ingelheim. That is a German pharmaceutical company based out of Fremont, California, in the Bay Area. And given that that was the peak time of COVID, my internship was completely remote at that time. So that is where I got the introduction to, how to work remotely and how to collaborate with people being in physically different spaces, which is a really important skill moving forward in the industry right now, given that a lot of teams are in different geographical regions and we need to still collaborate and work together. So I was working in their plant engineering and strategy department, and my job was to basically make sure that all the tech transfers that are happening from different companies into Behringer were successfully coming in. And the other part of my role was making sure that the operations were more or less following the operational excellence standards to make sure that we can cut costs, we can make our equipment better, and we can get the maximum throughput from our equipment. So that is where I started developing an appreciation for operational excellence, for Six Sigma rules. And that is something that when I came back to KGI for the second year after the internship, I wanted to learn more about that part of the process. So I did more courses in supply chain and business operations where I could understand more about how to make processes more efficient, not only from a technical standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. So after my time at KGI, I also did my TMP during KGI with Behringer with the same company within the same team, and continued my internship project in a way to work on their bioreactors operational capabilities, which was a really cool thing for me because instead of just being at that company for 3 short months and just leaving, I was able to spend an entire year with the company and learn a lot more, network a lot more with them. After that, I graduated and I got my first job at Gilead. So Gilead is based out of Foster City in the Bay Area again, but I work with their site in Laverne, which is just a 10-minute drive away from KGI. So whenever you guys come to KGI and you're willing to come visit the Laverne site, I'd be happy to arrange something here so that everyone can come see what the pharma company looks like from the inside. So Laverne site for Gilead is one of the main production sites for one of our key drugs, which is called Ambisome, an antifungal drug. And it is the fill finish and packaging site for most of our portfolio for the US market. Within the supply chain team, my job is basically to look at planning. So supply chain has a lot of different things, as you might know. My job is limited to getting demand numbers from the demand planning team, looking at the market forecast and trying to translate those demand numbers into production capacities for our site. So to look at what the market needs and translating that how much we can produce so that there's never a gap between what we can produce, our inventory, and the patient. So I think it is a really good position for me because with each step in my career, I've been able to move one step closer to the patient, moving from research into engineering, working on the bioreactors, and now in supply chain. So this has really brought me closer to the finished goods and understanding how that really impacts our customers. So I think the next question that Dr. Chalk asked me was what I find really interesting about this job and what are the challenges. So something that I find really, really interesting about the job is how the market scenarios keep on changing really quickly over time. And the demand planning team can make a lot of projections about what the demand will look like in the future. But the market changes really quickly. Competition suddenly comes out of nowhere. And that really impacts our long-term plans that we create 3 to 5 years down the line. So how quickly our teams can adjust to those changes and make those changes working in conjunction with a lot of other teams such as engineering, validation, product lifecycle management, commercial teams, logistics teams. There's just so many different teams that you have to work with in order to make sure that the product goes out into the market, and how you can do that with a lot of agility while making sure that there's never an issue or there's never a demand or supply shortage for the patient. So just that aspect really is really interesting to me. That is what I love working about this team, that things keep on changing. Some challenges that I currently face in my role are that we are in a very major change in our ERP system, which is the Enterprise Resource Planning software system. So we are moving from a software called Oracle, I'm sure you all have heard of that, into SAP. And this is a 5-year long project that the company has taken on. And this change brings a lot of change management roles into the organization. And this is very challenging because we are in the middle of two systems where we are trying to phase our products from one system to another. The new system does not have a lot of rules defined. So just trying to get that transfer done from system to another can be very challenging. And I think it is what makes my job a lot more harder, but also a lot more interesting and fun because there's a new challenge to look forward to literally every single day. So yeah, that is all I had to say.
Awesome, Divij. Uh, now, would you like to touch a little bit on your current company, Gilead, in terms of the work culture and what you liked most about working at Gilead? I know that we've talked about the job, the challenging and those things, but now I sort of want to shift the lens towards more like organizational behavior, more macro picture. What is it that you like about working in this company? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I absolutely love the most looking at from, 100,000 feet perspective down below is that everyone is really collaborative. I have tried to send meeting requests to, people at VP levels at the headquarters, and they've never been rejected. So that shows that there is a mindset that promotes growth, that promotes discussion, that promotes people asking questions and the difficult questions and getting the answers from people high above. That is a culture that I do not see in all the companies around in the pharmaceutical industry. This is something really, really exciting that I find about our company, that everyone is encouraged to, get outside of your comfort zone and define your own job description. When I started, I was only doing a certain part of execution, and I was able to, over time, just in 1 year, able to expand my role into planning, into demand planning. And I'm also going to start looking at clinical next year onwards. So asking those questions, trying to expand your role is something that I really like about this organization, where you can ask for more responsibilities, ask for more projects, and not only from a working perspective, but from a learning perspective. Another thing that I absolutely love is that Gilead loves to do workshops. Even when our jobs were completely remote during COVID, they organized a lot of online workshops. They help you get your certifications in, they help you pay for your student loans, and they help you, go get more training so that you can be a better resource to the company. So that does not only helps you do your job better, but also adds on to your resume over time, given that I was able to get my yellow belt in with Gilead just within the first 6 months. And that is something not a lot of companies do out there. So I think that is something I absolutely love about Gilead. And did you also ask about the work culture in general? I think,
Yes, I did. Yeah.
yeah.
That
So,
that yeah. Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, the work culture at Gilead, I think, is really agile. So the company really appreciates a very quick turnaround time on things because it is we have a lot of new products coming into the market. One of the main corporate goals of the company is to get out major cancer therapies by the end of 2030. So we are really in a very go fast mode where everything needs to be done really quickly. So finding out ways to make your job easier, better, while still staying in compliance is really appreciated. And people who are able to bring that kind of a mindset where you can tell them, this is a method or a pathway that you're following right now. This is how we can make it faster and better in the future. So having that kind of a mindset and giving those suggestions to people can really help you do better in your job. And that is the mindset that Gilead is promoting right now. So I think that is the work culture, to make everything better, faster, cheaper, safer for the patients in general.
Thank you so much. One of a couple of things that Divij reminded me of is some of the scholarly work in our field. One is the book Questions and Answers, and that is by a MIT lecturer, senior lecturer, a leadership person who actually collaborated with Clayton Christensen, the late Clayton Christensen, when about where did disruptive innovators come from, and one of the things is that able to ask questions, good questions. And in fact, a lot of people do not have this kind of skill set as they move up the ranks because they are very operational. They move up the ranks because they're able to turn things around, come up, solve problems. However, the higher that you move up, the more that it becomes what kind of problems do we want to solve, right? Framing your question, framing your problem, your research problem become very important. The other thing is what he mentions that reminded me of the scholar literature in management is organizational learning. Stuff that we talk about like absorptive capacity, exploratory learning, transformative learning, exploitative learning has a lot to do with what he was talking about, like all those workshops, all those training. And a company that has a culture of learning is going to do better, I think, competitively in terms of competitive advantage in the long run to be sustainable. So that's me commenting on what he said. I want to sort of come back a little bit and ask, Divij, to have you do a little bit of time travel and ask, so why did you come to KGI? Because I know that it sounds like you learn a lot of things here, which helps in your job in Gilead. And, the TMPs as usual, are also very useful. But you didn't know about that when before you come to KGI. And also there's equifinality in that there are different pathways to success. And there are many people in Gilead that did not come to KGI and still successful, and in fact maybe some of them even more successful. And so we're curious on behalf of the students on why did you come to KGI?
Absolutely. Before I go ahead and answer that question, I think I just want to quickly go back to what Dr. Chalk just said about asking good questions. And that is something I really want to emphasize. It's not only at work, it's also at school. I think it is a personal learning for me over the past couple of years about asking questions and asking good questions, just because I come from a research background. And a lot of times in research, you are not given the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. It's that, your professors or your PIs tell you to do a certain experiment a certain way, and you have to do it. It's a more yes sir, yes ma'am kind of an attitude. I'll do this, it makes sense. This is what the protocol says, and I'll just follow it. So that does not really fly and take you a long way in the industry, just in general, because when you are new in the industry, you can do for a while what your manager tells you to do, but then you're not doing anything with your own mindset and not creating an impact in general. You're just being a person who's doing some sort of an administrative role or some sort of a role where you're just doing what you're told and not really trying to create an improvement, not really asking the whys behind why we are doing certain things in a certain way. So asking those whys and questioning the reasoning as well is something that's really important. So something my manager told me was ask people why at least thrice. So if they tell me to do something, it'll be like, why do I do this way? They'll give you an answer and then ask them, why is this reason appropriate? Why not some other way? And ask that again to their answer so that you have the most in-depth knowledge about why you want to do something in a certain way. And that is when you can understand the entire situation, and that is what makes you eligible to give a better recommendation or suggestion to do it in a different way in general. So that is something I just wanted to highlight here. Now going back to answering Dr. Chalk's question about why I came to KGI. So this goes back to like me trying to move out of the research area where I was. So I applied to a lot of schools while I was planning to move to the US, and KGI being a smaller school was not something I had heard about in India. It was not the most popular choice back in India. You hear about the big brand names like, the NYUs or the UCLAs and UCSF or the Ivy Leagues. those are the popular names in the international market. KGI wasn't one of them at that time. So I had one alumni from my undergrad school who had come to KGI. His name is Pranav Madan or Pranay Madan. He works at Desi Bio Consulting now. So he graduated my undergrad 4 years before I did, and somehow I was able to get in touch with him, and he recommended me to look at KGI and got me in touch with a few people. So I started messaging people on LinkedIn and try to understand their experience. From what I understood was that all people who came to KGI were able to get a job, which was one of the main things I was looking at that time, that, once you graduate, you need a job. And I saw most people get into the industry. Most people had a really good job. They were able to make the switch. A lot of people that come to KGI come from a research or a scientist kind of a background. So most people were able to pivot their careers from that scientific journey into a more commercial business, project management, what have you, that kind of a journey. That is something that really motivated me to see the numbers out there, that a lot of alumni have been able to be very successful in these large or small pharmaceutical companies in the area. And that really gave me a push to apply for KGI. But that did not really eliminate all other options that I had. Like, I know that NYU and UCI also have pretty similar programs. UCI has a biotech management program, and so does NYU. So my next step was to ask people over there what their experience has been like. So the MBS program at KGI is the first and the only program within the US that was one of its kind at that time. UCI's program very new, so they do not have that kind of industry connections or the alumni base that we here at KGI have, and that networking and talking to alumni, connecting with them on LinkedIn, and understanding what they do, what the industry looks like, is really important for you to get out there and find a job and get into the work that you're trying to look into, because you cannot just rely on your school to find a job for you. You need to get out there and network. So KGI had the network, and then NYU also had the program, but almost all people who graduated from that program were not getting the core skills of business in terms of biotech or in terms of the industry. So they were doing their business classes with the MBA students in the business school. They were doing their science classes with the MS students, and there was no bridge joining these two classes together. Whereas at KGI, they'll teach you all the business courses from the perspective of science, from the perspective of the industry. So it's all building one on top of another instead of two separate institutes teaching you two separate things and you not being able to connect them together. So these were my three choices when I came, and KGI was my topmost choice at that time, just because I was able to get the success stories, I was able to connect with the courses, and it made the most sense for where I wanted to be. So that was my thought process behind choosing KGI.
So, to me, it sounds like networking, leads you to KGI one way or another. And obviously, Divij, when you were in my class, I already feel that you were pretty good at networking. But I'm curious to know that from there, did you get even better at networking? And as a proxy variable, I'm a scientist of business, right? And so that's why I tend to ask things conceptually. As a proxy of that, can you also share with me, where you got your internship? What was it about? And how did you get it? Did networking play a role, in getting that internship?
Absolutely. Great question. So I was really bad at networking when I came to KGI. I was the worst person to talk to. I still am. I'm still working on it. I am a very introverted person, so just to network or go to events in person or just talking to people does not come naturally to me. I had to push myself to really get out of my comfort zone, to really shatter those boundaries and be like, I can go, I can say hello to someone and introduce myself. It was a very big mental effort on my end. Something that really helped me to understand the networking scenario better was Angela Corsi. She is our director of admissions. No, sorry, the director of career services at KGI. And she has a professional development course that everyone needs to enroll into during their first semester. So she helps people understand what really networking is all about, how to approach people, how to better write your resume, how to write a cover letter. These were skills that I never really possessed, and I did not really know how to do these things. So something that really helped me was one, writing to people on LinkedIn, just not pressing the connect button because I can, but actually looking at their background, looking where they're coming from, what they do, and doing some research about that company that they're working for. So when I connect with someone, I try to send a personalized note saying, hi, I'm Divij, I'm a student at KGI, I'm studying business and science. I think that your role at so and so company within the so and so team is really exciting, and I would really like to learn more about it. And I hope we can connect. So that kind of gives them a reason why they need to connect with you, especially because they're busy, they're in the industry, they don't have time to connect with everyone. And once they do connect with you, following up with them, asking them if they can spare 10 to 15 minutes for a call, and understanding what they do, how they got in there, what are the key skills required. So those were the questions that I started asking people, and then started taking my notes. Something that is really nerdy of me to do was creating an Excel tracker for all the people I networked with. So I have this long tracker where I write down names of people, where they're working, their emails, their phone numbers. And whenever I can, I try to follow up with them every now and then just to see how they're doing. If they change jobs, talking to them about their new role. If it's New Year, just wishing them a happy New Year, just so that they remember me and I can stay in touch with them. Because whenever you want to find a job, you want to change a job, your network is the only resource you can depend on, because you can send in as many applications to the HR department as you want. They'll get filtered out left, right, and center. Your network is something that pulls your application out from the HR in front of the hiring manager. So I think this is something that's really important. For my internship, it was at BI, Behringer Ingelheim, as I told you about. It did come through networking of sorts because they had an internship panel that they were doing. It was posted on their website. So I went on there and I listened into the panel, something like this, where all the interns were talking about their experience. And I was able to get in touch with a couple of interns and ask them how were their interviews, what were the kind of questions they got, how is the company work culture. And through them, I got an email for a recruiter within BI. Then I reached out to the recruiter and said, I've applied for this internship like a week ago. Can I follow up on this? And because that was a personal email, she got back to me and she pushed my application out from the pool in front of the hiring manager. And that led to my subsequent finding of an internship. Even though it was COVID, a lot of internships were getting canceled, but I think it was this sort of a networking process that really led me to that internship.
So I think that to sum up in one phrase is that um, luck favors the prepared.
It does.
And so, internally, you may feel that, oh, I'm not good at networking and all those things. But because of that, you work very hard, at networking, and you got pretty methodical, like an engineer about, and like an engineer and scientist, like, how do I network? What are data points and all those things? And that paradoxically actually helps you become better at networking. So from my angle, from an outside looking in, you are pretty good at networking. And I think that as long as you keep up the attitude, I think that you will continue to be very good at networking. People sometimes assume that networking has to do with the personality, but in fact, networking is something that is continuous. And so beside just like, oh, I just love network, before you even network, very often it's important to ask questions like, why do I want to network? Whom I want to network with, and what is the most sustainable trajectory to network? Because networks requires constant energy to maintain. And so it's not something that just, oh, let's just go network.
I completely agree with that. And just to build on top of it, people might have 2,000, 3,000 connections on LinkedIn, but that does not mean that they are your network. And those are not the people you can just blankly reach out to for whenever you need help. Network might be a very small group of 20, 30 people that you are in touch with over time. You build a relationship with them. And that is what actually constitutes your professional network. And even when you find an internship, a job, you have to continue building those relationships on trying to, stay on top of it and thoughtfully put effort into it over time.
Excellent. So, Divij, I think that throughout our this talk, I think that you have sort of like explain, what you have been doing career-wise, and sort of walk us from, your undergrad, was very technical, research-oriented. I would add that, the biological research-oriented, because social science research and business research very often it's not like that, right? There's a lot more freedom than, in fact, more expectation that one asks important questions early on. Um, so your career path has sort of, operate in a certain fashion, and as a result, you make certain decisions along the way. Not picking UCI, not picking NYU, and then coming to KGI. You know, selecting the courses that you have taken, selecting that internship, and then your first job, right? And of course connecting that with your TMP. So with all that behind you now, what kind of advice would you give to a new student, which we have, people who have accepted and will be joining KGI, as well as a potential applicant?
Absolutely. I Ever since I started into a biotech field from my undergrad, my career path that I thought I would be doing changed every 6 months. I did not know what I was doing when I joined undergrad. During KGI, I did not know that I would end up in supply chain. This was not a conscious decision that I made when I joined KGI that I will be going into supply chain or I will be going into business ops. It's just that the projects that I did, the experiences that I got over time continuously built on top of one another, leading me to this job that I currently hold. So going back to undergrad, when I started engineering, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be working with bioreactors at all times. Then I moved into microbiology and nanotech, and I was completely in research mode out of engineering, developing my own silver nanoparticles to be used as antimicrobials. Almost started writing a patent on that application when I really got bored out of it. And I was like, no, this is something I really don't want to do. And that is when I started looking into the biotech industry and saw that how huge it is. And it looks really big from the outside, but once you get in, you realize it's not that big. Uh, it is a few companies, and that network of people, as I said, will be the people you'll be working with in every company. So when people move jobs, everyone knows everyone in the industry. So be very cautious of that. Do not create a bad relationship with anyone, especially with your colleagues at KGI, because this is going to be your professional network for pretty much the rest of your life in your professional careers. So always be really mindful of that this is your professional network. These are the people you will be working with in your company or outside of your company for a long time in the future. Um, Going back to where I was coming from. So how do I say this? I decided to move to KGI, as you know. So when I came here, I was really interested in regulatory affairs, and I thought that might be something really cool for me to do, given that I have the scientific background, I have the engineering background, I understand the scientific writing process, and just understanding the regulations can lead me to it. So I did a lot of reg affairs kind of courses, and I was looking for internships in that area too. But then I got a couple of offers for internships. One of them was reg, and then one of them was engineering and operational excellence. And I was like, oh, I have an engineering background, so I don't know a lot about operational excellence. Reg is something that I'm learning at school, so let's do this. This will be something new to explore. And not making a very conscious decision, I just moved into engineering again and back into operational excellence, which was really fun for me to do because I understood some of um, the science and the engineering aspects of things, but learning about operational excellence, learning about Six Sigma was something that was really new to me. And I completely enjoyed it because with a mindset of an engineer, you want to make processes as efficient as you can. And having that knowledge and background really backs you up. That is what really led my interest into supply chain in the future, because supply chain, is a part of the operations umbrella. So in every company, there's a big operations department, or at Gilead, we call it the PDM, which is the pharmaceutical manufacturing and development. So anything that comes out of R&D moves into PDM for all clinical trials, for manufacturing, through commercial, through supply, and moves out as finished goods into completely commercial. So that umbrella covers literally everything from the life cycle of the drug. And having even one area of under that umbrella, knowing that one piece can help you move into different pieces and learning about, the entire life cycle of a drug. So that is something that I found really cool. And reg was one piece that was outside of it. And reg is very career specific. And I did not want to get tied up in that area for myself. I thought, like, if I go into reg, that might be something that I have to do for the rest of my life. I'm not sure if that is true or not, but that was my perspective on it. But I thought with supply chain, this is something that can help me move out and branch out into a lot of different areas. And even outside this industry, if I need to step out of pharma, move into med devices, or move into pure biotech, or move into food tech, this is something that can take me to different areas. So that was my mindset about, choosing these different paths at different points in my career.
Thank you, Divij. One of the things that sort of strikes me based on what you are saying is that this kind of interpersonal relationship, emotional intelligence is very important. Emotional control, stability, because it's pretty high stakes. I mean, like in a certain sense, KGI is as someone has told me before, there's a little KGI mafia in Amgen, right? Because there's a lot of those, and increasingly maybe as Gilead, expanded from north to south, right? With the acquisition of with Kite, with the shift from the small molecule, drugs to now the
Biologics and
oncology,
cell
blood
therapy.
cancer, and all those things, the bioprocessing portion is increasingly, KGI graduates, alumni is also influential in this space. And Amgen and Gilead are both in greater Los Angeles. So it's pretty high stakes now, right? You want to be nice to your colleagues in your TMP, to your classmates, because you're gonna meet them, you're gonna cross path with them again and again, in your company, in industry, because there's only like those big four companies that are dominating all the different startups that they're acquiring, the alliances and all those things.
I
So
agree with that. I'm sorry, just to add on to
yeah,
it. As you said, there is a little KGI mafia at Amgen. I think, from my understanding, I think there will be more than 100 to 150 KGI students just working at Amgen. And there are certain teams which are completely only KGI teams within Amgen as well. So, it is the people you graduate with and you work with for a good couple of years in your professional journey. So I think it is really important to have that kind of a working relationship with students as well. Do not think that you would not see people after you graduate. You will see them all the time. Within Gilead as well, we have 3 sites just in California. We have Foster City, we have Laverne, we have Oceanside. Each site does something different. Then we have our sister company, Kite, which is also part of Gilead in Santa Monica. And with the recent acquisition of Immunomedics, that is a company we acquired in New Jersey. So we have more, areas where you'll be working with the same people over and over again. So this is something that I've recently started doing, is organize a KGI call within Gilead. So I try to link up with all the alumni, and people kept adding on to that call. Some people I didn't even know. And we have a good like 50 people at Gilead that I know are KGI alumni currently. So that is something that I find really cool, that, you graduate with these people, and or maybe they are a couple of years ahead of you when they graduate. So I have seen a lot of senior directors who are KGI alumni of 2003, 4, 5 batches now, who are at Gilead. And it is so much easier to develop a relationship with them, talk to them, because they have the same experiences as you, than someone who is completely from a different field or a different school. So I think just your school makes a big difference, and having that relationship helps you a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. And just along that line, one of the things that so there's one observation I have that one big observation that I sort of distill from what you were saying. I'm glad you added that. The other one was based on just now what you were saying about even if you're in one role, because of you're collaborating with many people, you get to see the drug discovery, the product life cycle, and those things. So it strikes me that many business roles in the life sciences actually require a lot of knowledge, broadness, right? That span multiple areas. I take that to heart when I do my own course in digital innovation in healthcare, where I have students realize that you know life sciences and healthcare are not separate; they are actually interconnected, right? And we see that very evident, in leading cross-functional teams. And so I wonder if you have any recommendations, um, you know, beyond just now what we discussed, right? In terms of networking, emotional intelligence, and those things. What other practical recommendations that you have for a life science undergrad or graduate student to become proficient and confident in engaging in cross-functional teams?
That is a really great question, and that is something that I wonder sometimes myself, given that I've moved out completely from science in a very commercial field within the company. Even though I am in commercial, I have to very closely interact with manufacturing, with production, packaging, validation, engineering. So given that I have to interact with these groups, there is a lot of terminology that floats around that is very scientific. Some people in my team are not from the biotech background, they do not understand pharma as well. And they have to actually dig around and do a lot more homework to understand what other people are trying to communicate. So just in terms of probably, I'd say very simple example can be a cleaning validation or a microbial swab or understanding how growth kinetics for a microbe works. So these are some things that we look at while we are in supply chain. We don't really have to work on them. But given that I understand these, in a conversation, when someone throws these terms at me, I do not have to wonder what it really means. So at KGI, a lot of us come from a mindset that, we just want to do business. We want to go in the business side of things. And why are they forcing us to do some technical classes? And why is there a technical requirement when we just want to do business courses here? So understanding that those technical requirements are actually really helpful in the industry. Understanding that, you'll be a subject matter expert in a different team while also working on a commercial side of things, that can really help you grow faster in your career. You will be the one asking the smarter questions, and people will be just asking, what do you do in a microbial swab? Whereas you can be asking better questions and trying to communicate that project in a better manner. So do not run away from all the technical classes. That is my number one advice for people at KGI. I saw a lot of my batchmates not wanting to take technical classes, but I am glad they did, because now when I see them in their careers, it really helps them. When I talk to them, they do tell me that their technical courses have really helped them understand what it really means in a big picture perspective. A lot of us end up becoming project managers, and we have to interact with so many different teams across the board. So understanding the lingo of different teams, and something that as scientists or as technical people we do not understand is that not everyone understands the technical lingo. So having the ability to explain that lingo in a very simplified manner, or in layman's terms, just dumbing things down to as much as we can so that it becomes more applicable and understandable to the wider audience, is one of the biggest skill sets that the industry looks for. My manager at my work does not really have any biotech background. So whenever I have to explain my project to her, I have to bring it to her in form of presentation that she can easily understand. So that skill set is really, really important. Having the ability to communicate technical or difficult processes to a person who is not as technically efficient. So I think these are the two main things that I want to highlight over here.
Awesome. Now, we want to have some time for the students to be asking the questions. And I don't know whether I say this at the beginning, but nowadays KGI is customary for us to professors to say, please turn on a video. I should have said that at the beginning. If I did not, I apologize for that. Now I'm just going to remind again, please turn on your video if possible. And also, please, do you have any questions that you want to ask Divij or me or KGI admission? Matthew, any questions?
No, I think you covered everything that I was interested in.
Michael, no questions?
No.
Okay. Right. How about the others? Okay, so I have a question. Divij, I want to ask you how useful was the TMP in helping you to learn how to work and lead in cross-functional teams?
Um, Great question, Dr. Chalk. I think the TMP was a very unique and a very helpful experience for me. I have not worked in the industry before this, so just learning how to communicate with professionals is the first thing that I started learning within my TMP. From the very basic things that people don't really think about, like professional emailing etiquette, about how to, manage different SharePoints, because the things that we work on are highly confidential. So just that data sharing with as students, we don't really think about it, but with pharma industry, the data is really confidential. It costs money, and if you mess up with it, it can lead to loss of millions of dollars to the company. So even communicating that data or transferring that data to the company can be something that was a challenge for us, because they did not want, their legal team did not allow us to just email information back and forth. So we had to set up a different Microsoft account within their company where we were transferring files through that account. So just understanding the complexities of these things, starting from these basic emailing, communicating, the difficulty of aligning schedules for different people because people in the industry are so busy. So kind of prioritizing different tasks. These were the things that I started learning with my TMP and understanding how, what is the most important thing to do versus what can be done later, and arranging them in a priority order with your TMP liaison. So I think these basic skills that we call soft skills within the industry. So I think these were the things that I really built on with my TMP. People can be easily taught the technical skills. It's not that hard to learn those things, but the soft skills are something that build over time. And that is something that the industry truly values, especially for someone coming in with less or no experience. And that is what they look at during the first few rounds of the interviews as well.
Thank you. One thing I want to add to that is also that, as I observed with multiple TMP teams over the years, is that I think one of the hardest soft skills to actually learn, but it's very important, is sort of to understand information and engage in information disclosure. Because students in TMP are in a very juxtaposed in a very unique situation. On one end, they sign confidentiality agreements, which means that they cannot disclose things that are confidential, right, proprietary to the company. On the other end, they're subjected to faculty presentations, and towards the end, a public presentation, because the team master's project is in lieu of a master thesis. And so there's a certain openness that's required. You see the same kind of dynamics in biopharmaceutical companies as well, because to engage, it's necessary to engage with academia, it's necessary to engage with patients and the PIs in the hospitals and health centers to recruit for clinical trials. You need to provide data to the FDA advisory committee, right? Which have minutes where they deliberate on the statistical data evidence you show. So it's a constant dance between confidentiality and then transparency right, privacy to the patients and aggregated data, replicable aggregated data or procedures so that people can have trust in the science. And I think that understanding the norms, the standards among the different things and trying to find meander that narrow corridor to make sure that what you have done is acceptable to science and industry is a tremendously difficult soft skill to learn. And in fact, even professors, there's outside of KGI, if you look at professors in traditional academic universities, some are more commercial oriented and can navigate that with depth, with skill, and others, are not able to and lapse into sort of an ideological divide. And we see, right, and I think people in industry are more clever and more aware of how to do that, but that does not come naturally as well. So there's going to be a lot of there's a demand, a need for people who can do soft skills in that fashion as well. Right,
Completely
Divij?
agree. Yeah, I think that is a really great point. It is a very fine line that people need to find a balance in, because a little bit more information than needed can lead into a legal jeopardy, and a little bit less information and you don't get enough information out to the public. The privacy versus the transparency, it's a big ethical conundrum for companies and patients. You do not want to disclose any patient information, but you want enough information for the company to go ahead with the clinical trials or understand what the outcomes are. So I think it is always best to err on the side of caution, refer to the subject matter experts, than just make an uninformed decision about whatever you're dealing with in when you're dealing with the industry in form of TMPs.
Okay. Now Matthew, his picture shows this, and so maybe he wants to raise his hand. Matthew, do you have any questions? We still have 5 minutes. That's right.
No, again, I think you covered everything.
No, the other Matthew Chan. Matthew Chan, do you have any questions? No? Okay, all right. Okay, so I think that, yeah, we sort of really covered everything. Any questions on admission side that you want to ask?
Nothing from me. No, thank you so much to both of you and to all of our students for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll be sticking around for another 5 more minutes just in case students or applicants want to ask me any questions about the MBS. And Divij, really, really great to see you again and to reconnect and talk.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure for me to be here. I do see one question on the chat really quick. Matthew
Oh,
asked,
okay.
what technical courses do you recommend to best prepare for working in the industry? It completely depends, which area in the industry you want to work at. If you want to be in R&D, a lot of research-based courses, pharmaceutical discovery and development kind of courses can be helpful. If you want to be in reg, focusing on that area. For general biopharma industry, I recommend courses related to bioprocessing, just to understand how drugs are being prepared in this time, because most companies are biologics based now. The other course that I would really recommend is CMC, which is chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. So that helps you understand what really goes into filing, what really goes into change management for drugs. And lastly, a course that I recommend is business operations. It is not a very technical course, but I think it is dangerous enough to be technical, but also a businessy course that teaches you about operational excellence, not only in terms of the technical side of the industry, but also the commercial side of industry. So it helps you play on both sides.
Okay. All right. So no more questions. Then we'll see you around. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
Divij.
everyone.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
All right.
We have 2 more. Whether they have any questions for us?
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so
Oh.
much, Dr. Chalk. We really appreciate your time.
Okay, all right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.